What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Friday, March 24th, 2017. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. The Lady Claire will be with us in hour number 3 with her particular perspective on the world here. The crybabies are attacking my web server, so I guess the gang's all here, and let's move forward and actually get something useful done here. Now, we're going to start the top of the show with Obamagate, because the story is developing very rapidly, actually faster than I was expecting it to do. Remember, I'd said it was more than 2 years between the Watergate burglary and Richard Nixon having to resign. And so we would expect this to take a little time. Not as much in the age of the Internet and the independent media, and as a matter of fact, it is going along very, very fast. And a lot of attention now is being focused on the revelations coming out of Freedom Watch, which is the new organization founded by Larry Klayman, the founder of Judicial Watch. And apparently there is a new whistleblower who has come forward. We've mentioned it before, Dennis Montgomery, and he has brought to Freedom Watch 47 hard drives full of information about this spying on everybody. Now, Montgomery is trying to use a legal whistleblower process rather than just out it the way that Edward Snowden did, and that's why he's gone to Larry Klayman for legal representation. But what is coming on out there is this information is showing that the Obama White House was spying on a lot of people, not just Donald Trump, and it went back a very long time. And keep that in mind, because that is an important point to remember as we talk about what else is coming on here. Now, Larry Klayman was on the Fox Business Network, basically saying that the evidence he's seeing indicating this massive, unauthorized, illegal spying, apparently for political gain, is a crime for which Barack Obama and a lot of his associates ought to go to prison for. They've got these 47 hard drives. There's 600 million pages of information. They're still going through it, and what they're finding is just astounding. Representative Peter King is confirming that members of the Trump transition team were surveilled by the Obama administration, and basically saying it was going on long before the FISA warrant was issued. And according to King, this is not an isolated thing. They're finding many reports, many sources, many different players in this. It was a huge operation, even larger than Nixon's committee to re-elect the president. And they're basically out there saying that all of this talk about, they're basically what Obama and the corporate media and the deep state are doing is they're now admitting that yes, there was spying on the Trump campaign and the Trump transition, but it was incidental because we were gathering intelligence regarding this other thing, this supposed link between Trump and Russia. And so now incidental collection has become the new buzzword for the corporate media to make you think that this is not important, that this is not a repeat of the Watergate scandal all over again. But there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, we know that FISA warrant was acquired through fraud, and we know the spying on the Trump people went back long before the FISA warrant was actually ordered. General Tom McInerney, who is a commander, former assistant vice chief of staff for the U.S. Air Force, was interviewed on the Dr. Dave Janda radio show, saying the FISA warrant was just a cover to make it sort of look legitimate if it ever came out that the Obama administration was spying on the Trump campaign. And apparently Attorney General Loretta Lynch already had a huge archive of surveillance data on candidate Donald Trump long before they ever got those FISA warrants. This is a new Watergate. Now, there's a separate issue going on, and it has to do with what's called unmasking. And that is when you expose the names of people in positions of power and authority who don't want that to be public knowledge. Remember the Valerie Plame scandal where in their haste to discredit her husband's report that the yellow cake claim from Niger was a forgery, the George W. Bush administration inadvertently revealed that Valerie Plame was CIA, and the company she worked for was actually a front for tracking nuclear weapons being traded around the world by countries that have not signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we know who that is. And it resulted in that company having to be shut down because all of their sources thought they were doing something other than what they were doing. But Bob Woodward is out there saying that this unmasking of Trump officials by leaking this information, making it public, that's a gross violation. And it shows that just like it was with George W. Bush, Barack Obama and his supporters are just being incredibly reckless with what should be protected data. And that's another reason right there that we all need to dig our heels in terms of all this spying and our bugging of our tablets and everything. This government cannot be trusted with your personal private information. They'll use it any way they want to. Remember the bugging of the Seattle Asia-Pacific Economic Conference? Government agents were breaking into the computers of conference attendees to steal business secrets and give them to Bill Clinton cronies. So it is a new Watergate. They were spying on the Trump campaign. That information wound up in the hands of the Hillary campaign. The spying preceded the issuance of a FISA warrant. The FISA warrant was based on fraudulent data. Yeah, we're there. It's a whole new Watergate, and it looks like it was a lot bigger and more sinister. And a lot of Americans, when they look back on Watergate and they see the movies and everything, you know, they come away with the impression that all of this was private on the part of Richard Nixon and his committee to re-elect. No, they were using FBI agents, CIA agents. They were just as dirty back then as they are right now. So this is a big stink. Meanwhile, of course, the corporate media is still out there trying to justify all this. Well, we just have a really strong hunch that Russia and Trump were doing business, and therefore we were justified on spying on them. And even Comey's admitting there is no evidence of it whatsoever. This communication from the servers in Trump Tower to Russia has been exposed as yet another fraud. The Department of Justice found malware on the Trump servers that was mimicking communications with Russia. The other side is saying they found malware there as well. Somebody went to a great deal of effort to break into these computers and install malware that was going to communicate back and forth to create an evidence trail that could be used to say that Donald Trump and the Russia were in cahoots. Now, Jack Matlock is a U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, or was from 1987 to 1991, and he's out there basically saying that this whole brouhaha over contacts with Russian diplomats by members of the Trump transition team is a witch hunt and full-on display that we are in a police state, because there is nothing wrong with members of a transition team talking to Russian diplomats about possibly improving relations. It's a normal practice. And he's saying we did it, every other president's done it, only in the case of Donald Trump has the corporate media tried to turn the normal course of diplomatic business into some kind of a crime. All right, we're going to take a short second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. The other big story that we're looking at right now is we're waiting on the vote for the health care bill. And apparently Trump has just now asked the House Speaker to yank it. And it's turned into a big fist fight between the people who want Obamacare and the people who want Ryan Care. Trump had originally issued an ultimatum saying you will vote for it today or we're just going to keep Obamacare where it is. And I'm glad he's moving off that, because that was going to backfire. What Trump was trying to say is, if you don't vote through a reformed health care package, then we're back on Obamacare, and it's your fault for not doing your job. Of course, we know Congress and the corporate media would dump the blame on Trump. He was being inflexible. He was being unreasonable. And he's betrayed his campaign promise. Well, in a way, unfortunately, sadly, he already has, because the campaign promise was a repeal of Obamacare, not just a repackage. And basically, even Ryan's closest supporters are saying this thing is just as bad as the old one. It's all about funneling money out of the pockets of the American people into the health insurance corporations. And it was an attempt to snooker us twice in a row. So that's it. It's Obamacare or Obamacare version 2.0. Where is the repeal we were told to expect? Now, do you remember back when they were pushing for TARP and all these bailouts and, taking money away from the American people and giving it to the banks who caused the 2008 mortgage-backed security meltdown? We're seeing the same kind, and back then the warnings were, oh, the economy will collapse, there'll be tanks in the streets. We're seeing the same fear-mongering right now. A story that came out of Kitco, stocks poised to stumble if Trump's health bill flops. Well, first of all, it isn't Trump's health bill, it's Paul Ryan's health bill. So let's get that out of the way right now. See what I said? They're already setting up. They're going to blame Trump for this not working here. Now, interestingly, CNBC, without actually naming this person, claims a member of Congress is predicting a 1,000-point stock market crash if Obamacare Light is not passed. So they're out there using scare tactics to try and ram this thing through. And according to Breitbart, remember those gun grabber provisions of Obamacare? They're still in Paul Ryan's version, where the government can scan all medical records to look for anybody that they think, well, this person ought not to have a gun. Anybody with PTSD or ADHD or even just anxiety, you can have your gun rights suspended if you're suffering from anxiety. And in the current country, under the current political chaos, the current economy, who isn't having to deal with anxiety? So under Ryan Care, your medical records are not private. Anybody can peek into them for any reason they want to. We're going to take a phone call from Scott in Norfolk. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, I really hope that this Ryan Care doesn't pass, because I think if it does pass, the health insurance industry is going to reward those establishment Republicans that chose to support it, and it's going to be tougher for them to be kicked out the next election. I think Trump's original idea was the right one, but he's got to be shown as trying to save it from imploding, and he's done that. Whether it passes or not, he's done it. He's shown the effort. But I think he needs to get past it. I agree with you. You need to let this blow up on its own. And I'm all for repeal, but I am not for replacing. And
I'm exactly the same with you. We should either go to copying a system that we already know works from another country, or go back to just letting the free market decide what's going to go on, let people make their own choices. But there's been a very alarming trend of which Obamacare is just one facet, where as the economy starts to stumble and lock up, large corporations with political influence are lobbying for the government to force people to buy their products, whether it's health insurance, vaccines, whatever. And the problem is we're running out of money out here in the hinterland. It doesn't matter how many laws they pass, this strategy will not work in the long run. The only thing that can work in the long run is to get the economy back up and running for ordinary people so we can pay for all this stuff that they want to sell us. Just ordering us to buy things, that's all Obamacare was. You know, Obama said, I'm going to guarantee health insurance coverage for every American. Then he stands up and says, you will buy your health insurance. Problem solved. And that's it. Same thing we're seeing with the vaccine industry. People don't want their products, can't afford their products. We'll make it mandatory. And it's a short-term fix that favors individual corporations, but it is not going to change the ultimate outcome of our economic decline. And somebody's going to have to man up and say, this is not a good approach to solving the economic problems. If anything, it's accelerating us down to the path of collapse by forcing ordinary Americans to just, descend into outright poverty and living on their credit cards because of all the things the government is telling them they have to buy now.
With these $5,000 deductibles, you basically don't. You have insurance you can't use.
That's it.
And if I had a $5,000 car insurance policy, I might as well not even have it because my car's not worth it. And that's where they got us. And I was for it in the beginning, Mike, but I was for a single payer. That's what I thought we were getting.
Yeah.
And now it's just a catastrophe. And here's another thing, and this is on a slightly different subject. I'm a recovering liberal, and I'm starting to see a lot of fellow liberals making this claim, especially on climate change, aka global warming, that they're on the side of science. And whenever I get into a discussion with them about this, climate change, I'll say, how scientific is it for you to tell people that they can change their chromosomes just by thinking about it?
That's a good one.
That's not scientific.
No,
that's
it isn't.
And magical thinking.
The reality is the science is not on the side of Al Gore and his warming hysterics. It's all manufactured propaganda, magical thinking, and we believe. And basically, they're not being scientists. They're merely using the label of science to try and prevail in the argument. These days, in the good old days, the kings would turn to the priests and the religions and say, you tell them the gods want them to do what I want them to do. And the priests would say, yes, sir, and they would do that. But obviously religion in our culture is very much on the wane now. And so the rulers have thrown the priests out and brought the scientists in. They give them a white lab coat and a clipboard, and they say, all right, now you tell the people that they are warming the planet so that they will pay the carbon taxes I want to impose. And the scientists will say, yes, sir, and that's exactly what they'll do. Just because somebody is a scientist does not make them necessarily or automatically an honorable person. There's no integrity that comes with that white lab coat. And most scientists are easily controlled by controlling the funding. And there was a huge amount of funding going on out for any scientist who could come up with any kind of a ginned-up report to say, yes, humans are warming the Earth. And a lot of scientists did very well out of the deal, but they weren't being scientific. Their results were not reproducible. They kept hiding the raw data. They kept hiding the methodology, and all of these are violations of classic scientific method. And so they're not being scientific. They're merely using the label and the image of science to try and convince you, because obviously they're scientists and they're liberals, and therefore they are much smarter and better educated than you, so you should just shut up and go along with what the liberals tell you. And again...
When I get into a debate about climate scientists, I tell them, and these are the same people who are claiming that 99% of all climate scientists are behind climate change. Big surprise there. I said, well, all that food that you get at Whole Foods because it's not GMO? Well, there's 99% of all GMO scientists that say GMO is not wrong. That's not bad for you.
Yeah.
So
same thing with the vaccines here. But first of all, that claim that 99% of climate scientists support the global warming, that itself is a lie. And a lot of the people who were listed on that list of people who are on board, they have actually threatened lawsuits unless their names are removed, because they are not, in fact, on board with that. A lot of the people who were claimed to be climate scientists supporting global warming aren't scientists at all. They don't have the advanced degrees. They're not published. They're just people who help shuffle the data around. They were making that thing up out of absolute thin air. And it's just part of this larger realization that, yes, virtually everything we get from corporate media and the government is a lie to control us, to rule us, to plunder our wealth, and to take our children for wars of conquest. There is nothing true coming out of the government or the corporate media. In the case of the corporate media, I think we can still trust the sports scores, but that's about it. Thank you for the call, Scott. We got to let you go and take a break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And let me just put this over to one side. Let's talk about the London terror attack, which is what they're calling it. And when it was all going down, they said there's two suspects. Well, now it's just back to the official one, and so it's already beginning to smell like some kind of a setup here. And everybody is exploiting it for their political gain. Now, yesterday we had all of the globalists, the Remainers, saying that this guy was born in Great Britain, and therefore mass immigration was absolutely not a factor. But let's be very honest. They're saying this guy was born in Britain and somehow was exposed to these radicalizing influences. I don't think they found those radicalizing influences in the British schools. So who brought this new point of view, this new philosophy, this new religion into Britain and introduced it to him? So, yeah, the mass immigration is a factor. Not because it produced this individual terrorist, but because it's conducive to that climate of radicalization. Now, showing how absurd some of the attempts to use this incident for political agenda can be, there was a story out of the Microsoft network, MSN.com, where they're saying that Khalid Massoud snapped because of the racism in his village, and then he became radicalized. So the corporate media spin, at least here in the United States of America, is it's all the fault of us white people. We're to blame for the attack on Parliament because we're all racists. I mean, that really is kind of ridiculous, but that's what they're doing. Now then, obviously huge outpouring of sympathy for the victims of what happened over there in Parliament in London. And a lot of people coming on out and saying, isn't it kind of weird that everybody's just crying over what happened in Parliament, and they're absolutely oblivious to what's going on in Yemen, where this Saudi-led, U.S.-backed blockade has put virtually the entire nation on the edge of famine. And nobody cares, because corporate media hasn't told you to care about it. We're the corporate media. We will tell you what to care about. You will care about these people who were hurt at the Parliament, and we don't care about what happened to people at Yemen. You will care about Kim Kardashian and her latest fashion, and you won't care about the fact that, you know, Obama appears to have been spying on the Trump campaign on behalf of Hillary. You don't care about that. You will care about the possibility, however remote, that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are secretly lovers. You see how it all works there. Let's take a phone call. Tom in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the I'm sorry, Tom in, Tom in Minnesota. Right. I had it right. Okay. What's on your mind?
Yeah. You're talking about the terror attacks in England. I wonder if that guy was a second generation, because from my experience, at least what I've observed on the internet and the Black Lives Matter, and around here we got a lot of Somalis and Mexicans. It's the second generation that seems to be the more radical than the first, who seems to be pretty, you know, at least outwardly polite. It's the second generation that seems to be kind of in your face.
Well, it may be because that first generation has a very accurate memory of what life was like in the home country, but that second generation, for them, it's an abstraction, which is far easier to manipulate into some romanticized version that will increase the sense of polarization with the current culture they're embedded in.
Right. That would explain, if he's second generation, that would explain his radicalization.
Okay.
Yeah, that's anyways, I guess, something to think about, because I don't know how far away he is from there, but I'll put money on he's second generation.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into. So yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. We're coming up on a commercial break. After we come on back, we're going to be talking about the war zones. Emphasis on the plural, because there's still all kinds of insane stuff going on out there. So we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're just now getting word that Ryan Care is dead. Apparently Trump and Ryan have pulled the new Obama health care bill. They could not get enough votes together to pass it, and basically it's now officially dead. And Congress may get back to thinking about a new health care sometime later in the year. And the corporate media is already dumping this on Donald Trump. Trump care is dead. It's a huge defeat, massive defeat for Donald Trump. So it's like I said, we've got a government that is so badly factionalized, it's become dysfunctional. They're too busy digging at each other and fighting with each other to actually accomplish anything useful or meaningful for the American people. Forget about building a wall along the border with Mexico. Let's build one around Washington, D.C. and lock them all in. And we'll fling some food over the wall every once in a while, keep them from eating each other. All right, let's take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. You seen any bearded Asian men lately? Because that's all the media was calling that London attacker.
Yeah, it is amazing. And when I pointed out the fact that the original report said he was Asian, and he certainly didn't look like that in the photos, and I got all these emails saying, well, from Britain's point of view, you know, anything on the other side of the channel is Asian. The Middle East is Asian. Really, it doesn't mean that they were trying to, you know, protect the immigration refugee thing going on. But even now they're having to back off and saying, yeah, this guy really doesn't qualify as Asian, especially because he was born in Great Britain.
And he didn't have a gun. MSNBC, there was a gun incident. You know, they do that on purpose. They're trying to get it to where got to ban the guns. Well, England don't have no guns. Only the special police in England carry the guns. That's why that cop got killed. If he would have had a gun, he wouldn't have got killed. He would have stopped the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to be very accurate, it is possible for the British subjects to own a firearm if they're into hunting or sport shooting, but the gun has to be stored at the club where they are a member, a hunting club or a sport shooting club, and they can join, and that allows them to own a firearm as long as it's kept on the premises there. It's not exactly gun freedom, but it's not accurate to say the British people are not allowed to have guns. It's just incredibly restricted. You know, it's like here in the United States of America. You can actually own a machine gun. You just have to pay a hideous tax, you know, for the license to own a machine gun. The license actually costs more than the gun itself. They did the same thing with fireworks here in Hawaii when they banned firecrackers and all this other thing because the snowflakes were afraid of the loud noise. They came on out and said, all right, well, you can buy firecrackers as long as you buy a permit from the city. And, of course, the permit was 5 times the cost of the actual firecrackers. That's how they think. You know, they're not going to change anything. They're just going to take away something that you are free to do and then sell it back to you. And that's how they're all operating.
So if somebody breaks into your house in England, you got to say, wait a minute, I got to go to the gun club?
Well, you know, the British police actually say just let the crooks do what they're going to do. And it is not uncommon to hear a story about an elderly couple sitting at home watching TV, and all of a sudden some people just break through the back door and they come on in. It's all very polite and calm and predictable, and they just take the TV and all the valuables and they go on out. And that is what the British people are told they should do. And for a while they were trying to sell that here in the United States of America, except that our particular criminals are a lot more prone to violence than the British ones are, and there were, you know, rapes and beatings going on. So, but, I mean, it is ridiculous to have a government that is so afraid of an armed population that they think that being a victim of a crime is morally superior or politically superior to being able to defend your home and loved ones.
And that police officer, by the way, was a former soldier, so I doubt his compatriots are really liking the way the government, you know, it's such a joke. I mean, I don't know what to think. The British, the French, the German, and you know, this actually works against the globalists right now because 3 of the kids were from France.
Yes.
So that helps Marie Le Pen.
Yeah.
So I don't think this was like a, I'm sorry, I don't think it was a, I thought it was a real event. I don't think they could have used this right now because the globalists are really in trouble right now.
Well, I don't know. We're hearing about all these other things that are going on. There was that aborted a terror attack, mass ramming of people that happened at the same time. One possible reason to have something like that happen was to give the corporate media a reason not to look at the revelations coming out of Freedom Watch and Larry Klayman, where they have got the actual hard evidence that, yes, the Obama administration was spying on Donald Trump long before the FISA warrant was obtained through fraud, and spying on a lot of other people without the appropriate legal authority. And the corporate media doesn't want to report that. Remember all the way back when Monica Lewinsky was testifying before Congress about the stained blue dress and, you know, the Hummers in the Oval Office and all the rest of it, and she walked on out expecting a phalanx of corporate media prostitutes and correspondents to be asking her some questions, and the stairs were empty because while she was inside, Bill Clinton hauled off and launched cruise missile attacks into a couple of Middle Eastern countries, claiming that he had to blow up these biological weapons laboratories, which later turned out it was an aspirin factory. The owners sued the United States successfully for the cost of replacing the facility. So you, the taxpayer, not only got to pay for the $1.5 million pop cruise missile, plus all the crews deploying it and using it, you got to pay to replace the factory as well. But it's controlling the media. Again, it's right out of Wag the Dog.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I want to switch gears to Ukraine, and make sure you don't sit next to somebody who's from Ukraine and smokes into an ammunition depot.
Yeah, real. Well, you know, at one point they were saying it was sabotage, and they were saying, yeah, it was an accident with a cigarette. The reality is that it could have even been a drone strike. That thing was just waiting to be set on fire, and it's just a huge, huge disaster for the people living around it.
And then one more real quick thing with the Russian guy, was a former Duma member who got killed in Ukraine. Now, he was killed because he's a lot of shady dealings, makes $34,000 a year, and he has 5 cars, including a Bentley Continental and 2 Range Rovers, so that guy was dirty. He probably had a bad business deal, so they knocked him off.
Well, since he's dead, can I have one of his 5 cars? Because I'm still dealing with a 17-year-old Honda with a busted ignition lock now.
I don't even know how much a Bentley Continental costs. Isn't that over like 100 or 200 grand? So,
well, I don't know. As long as it's in better condition than what I'm driving now, I'm not going to be too picky.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Getting on back here to the news. Trump is about ready to make a statement about the failure of Ryan Care, but of course the media, they're already dumping this on him. Oh, it's a huge defeat for Donald Trump. And no, Congress ganged up on him. Paul Ryan created a health care package that even Republicans couldn't get behind because it was just more Obamacare with different lettering on it. Now, getting on over to the war zones, the U.S. is increasing their involvement in Syria yet again, which is only adding to tensions, not just in the region, but the whole world. Everybody understands the more the U.S. pushes, the closer and closer they're coming to direct military confrontation with Russia and China. And that's a war I don't think this country can win, even with nuclear weapons. But it is getting out of control. Apparently the U.S. did an airstrike in Mosul. Got to get those. ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Apparently they killed everybody except a single 5-year-old girl. Well, send those planes back in and try it again. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, as you know, there is a war of words going on between Russia and Israel over Israel's continued incursions into Syria to bomb the Syrian army, apparently aiding ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And they did it the other day. They went on in. They were bombing Syrian forces to keep them away from a group of terrorists. And the Syrians actually shot back at Israel. The Syrians are still claiming they downed one of Israel's warplanes. Israel's denying it. But no matter, you will be asked to buy and pay for another replacement warplane for Israel if, in fact, it did happen. And Israel's attitude was, how dare you shoot at us while we're bombing your country? You anti-Semites, you. And Syria said, yeah, we're going to shoot at people who are in our country, bombing our people without our permission. And Russia came out and said to Israel, your days of going into Syria are now over, period, end of discussion. And they punctuated it with a cruise missile attack onto the very forces Israel was trying to protect. And then Netanyahu came out only yesterday and said, we're going to do whatever we want in Syria. We're Israel. We're above international law. You will not stop us. In fact, I have never officially received your demand that we stay out of Syria. So today, Lavrov is out there saying that Russia is going to judge Israel by its actions, not their words. Always good advice when dealing with Israel. Don't listen to what they're saying. Watch what they do. So that is building toward a confrontation, which again, the United States, going back to George W. Bush, has reached an agreement with Israel that if Israel gets into a major war, the U.S. will go to war on Israel's side, even if Israel starts that war. How is this an incentive to peace? When you go up to one of the most aggressive nations in human history and say, whatever you want to do, we will support you. Now, getting on back to that munitions depot in Ukraine, in Balakleya, it's nasty. They've had to evacuate 45,000 people from around the area. The fire is still going. The munitions are still cooking off and flying out over the residential areas. And this is a major setback for Poroshenko because this was the largest arms depot in Ukraine, and right now he's finding himself short of supplies with which to make war on the Donbass. And nobody wants to loan him any more money. So he is really in a serious, serious position right now. And I would not rule out some kind of sabotage or deliberate attack to light up that depot, knowing it was going to leave Poroshenko with very few options to go. Now, story coming out of FortRuss.com is saying that things are a lot worse for Poroshenko than he's letting on. And it's saying that basically Ukraine has lost more than 30,000 forces in the Donbass and is refusing to admit it. Now, that's hardly news. During a war, the true numbers of the casualties are never admitted. I remember back during Vietnam, where the nightly news was saying, well, we lost 4 here, we lost 5 here, blah, 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 blah. And even though we were all just seeing so many families around us were getting those horrible letters. You know, your kid is not coming back home. It was only after Vietnam was over and lost that the government finally sort of said, well, we're catching up on the numbers, and it was really 60,000. Now, the U.S. is out there trying to claim that Russia is supporting the Afghans and the Talibans just to tick off the United States of America. Needless to say, Russia's denying it. And, guys, let's remember what happened the last time Russia was in Afghanistan. The Russians were killing the Afghanis. They were killing the Taliban. I don't exactly think they're ready to swap wet, sloppy kisses with each other just yet. I mean, it's weird. If you go back and you look at that history, the Taliban grew out of the forces the U.S. supported against Russia in Afghanistan. If you believe any of this nonsense, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. Now, down in Turkey, Erdogan is really starting to alarm people. It's looking like his next presidential office ought to be a padded cell. And the European Union is now saying maybe it's time for Erdogan to be the next Yanukovych. In other words, it's time for a staged, provoked from outside coup d'etat to bring Erdogan down. Well, they already tried that a little while ago, and it failed miserably. And Erdogan has consolidated his power and his defenses since then, so a new one is going to be a lot harder to do. And if he does, in fact, get this referendum voted through, or if he's able to rig the election to make it look like it went through, he is going to be even more autocratic and tyrannical than he was before. This mucking about in Turkey, they've created a monster, and I got to tell you, I am not a believer in forecasting or predictions or anything like that, but I have read the works of Nostradamus, and he keeps talking about this Middle Eastern leader in a blue turban who ignites World War III. Now, Erdogan obviously doesn't wear a turban, but he does wear a lot of blue suits. It's enough to give you chicken skin, which is the Hawaii term for goosebumps, because we don't have a lot of geese over here. But it is a little weird here. Needless to say, once again, the U.S. senators, the finest senators that Israeli money can buy, are pushing through a new bill to tighten even more sanctions on Iran regarding its missile tests and other non-nuclear activities. And this is why this is so incredibly bogus. Iran made a deal with the P5+1. Iran is keeping to their commitments. Nobody can prove otherwise. Nobody's found any evidence otherwise. And the P5+1 deal said nothing about non-nuclear conventional weaponry, but the Get Iran cartel is trying to create a situation. All right, the nuclear thing is under control, but they've got ballistic missiles, they've got bombs and bullets. Yeah, so does the United States. Who's the one who's actually using them? It's cascading. I think the rest of the world is really getting fed up with the attitude of the federal U.S. government that they have some kind of a right to mess around with everybody else in the world. We've got to take a break for commercials here. I see we've got a caller waiting on the line, and we're going to take that phone call as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go right to the phones. Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I love those two new songs you have. I Want to Be a Pirate and that Davy Rockefeller song.
Yes. Davy Rockefeller.
Stuff.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to rotate some of the stuff back in, that we used to have. And the Davy Rockefeller, I figured, was timely because of his passing. That was actually written and recorded by a relative. And then we're going to start putting some of the other music in there. We're going to take Davy Rockefeller out, in fact, as of today, because it's no longer timely. He's gone on to meet his Lord and Master, Satan.
I would suggest you sell, if you make available a soundtrack of all the songs that you have playing on the show.
Well, if you go to WRHradio.com, about halfway down the page, there's a link that goes to a player of the full-length versions of all the songs that are on this show, including the music written by my lovely wife, the Lady Claire. So you can listen to it all there.
Okay, perfect. Mike, on the Obamagate scandal, do you think Obama knew something when he stated matter-of-factly, Donald Trump will not be president?
Well, yeah, I don't know that he actually knew anything, but it was very obvious that Obama and Hillary and the liberal Democrats were absolutely convinced they could steal the election. And I think one of the proofs that we have of that is Hillary hadn't even written a concession speech for election night. And normally any president or any candidate going into a race, whether it's governor, mayor, whatever, they'll write two speeches, the acceptance speech and the concession speech. Hillary didn't bother with a concession speech. She thought it was a slam dunk. Slam dunk. Trump's victory was so unexpected. I mean, she basically beat up John Podesta. They had to physically restrain her. I mean, she just absolutely lost it.
No, there's no question it was a landslide because 3 days out she canceled that fireworks display. She canceled the fireworks. I think they knew, like you said, you can't rig a landslide. This election was there was a lot bigger gap between the two than the results.
I would absolutely agree. Now, I don't know that Hillary herself canceled the fireworks. I think that was done by one of the lower level people who had a much firmer grasp on reality. The official story at the time was that they had not filed for the appropriate license for the fireworks show before the deadline.
Right.
But I think the fireworks were canceled by somebody who knew she wasn't going to win, but it's just like the closing days of World War II. You don't tell the Fuhrer he's messing up, or you're going to get shot. And in the context of that time, a lot of people the Democrats and Hillary did not like were dying. Seth Rich, the guy who had the barbell fall on his throat, and all this other nonsense going on back then.
And Brian Pagliano is still missing.
Yeah, Brian Pagliano is still missing. I'm going to keep you through the station. I'm going to keep you through station identification. Do not hang up. We'll be right back after these few words.